I've been using the newest update to Final Cut version 10.1, and I'm confident that we can go ahead and make this easy switch. Now, everybody who uses Final Cut now is going to do just fine with this, but I do want you to watch this training video in its entirety first. I think that's really going to help. A few things are going to look different, and you'll have to update your old projects and events. I just want to make sure you know what to expect. Let's start by taking a look at the new program as it looks once you're all set up. A quick note before we get too far. Maybe you're thinking of opening up the program and checking it out before we update projects and events. Well, when you open Final Cut 10.1 for the first time, it'll probably ask you if you want to update projects and events. If it does, and this is very important, go ahead and click Update Later until you know you're ready to do that. What I have here is just a training drive. This is the stuff I've been giving to students for about a year now. It used to look like this, remember? Now it looks like this. Now this icon right here, the one with 4 little purple squares, this is what Final Cut calls a library. You'll notice that we no longer see the names of hard drives listed here. I named this library Class Library, and it is, of course, saved to an external hard drive. As you can see, libraries have totally replaced the old Final Cut Events and Final Cut Projects folders. You'll also find that there's no longer a separate project library. See there, the little film reel button's gone. All projects and all source material are now contained in the same place. This is a project, see that? Projects are now in events. Other than that, it's just the same as it always was. Double-click a project to open it as a timeline. A library can have multiple events in it, of course, but you can also create additional libraries, and in fact, you can even close libraries that you aren't using. To make a new library, click File, New, Library. The first thing it's going to ask you, of course, is where to put it, and that you should already know, right? It goes on your hard drive. So this is how to make sure the work you're doing is being saved to your hard drive. You can call libraries whatever you want. I'm just going to call this Testing Library. And there it is, right there in the Libraries window. And then if I go back to the Finder, I'll see it there too. New libraries start off with a new event in them. I'll probably want to change the name of it. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and make a couple new events. I have one for clips, and here's one for graphics. And I'll make another new event just for projects. In fact, there's a checkbox here for that. When you're making a new event, if that's checked, there will automatically be a project in there too. And there it is, Untitled Project. I guess I'll change that name. And of course, I can have multiple projects contained in this one event. Let's go ahead and cover importing, mostly because I want to demonstrate that it actually hasn't changed that much, but there is one thing that looks a little different in the importing window. So, okay, so grab these graphics here, click Import Selected. Okay, so right here, it now says Copy Files Into and shows the name of the library you're using. You can change that, of course, if you want, but if you are right-clicking the event where you want to import, this is going to be set correctly automatically. Your other choice here is leave files in place. You probably remember that that's no good. You really want to have Final Cut copy the files into the library you're using so that everything stays self-contained. So you might be asking, how many events should I create? Or do I have to have separate events for each type of source material? Maybe you're wondering if you should start a new library for each production that you're working on, or just have one library for the entire hard drive. Well, those are workflow questions, and the good news is it's completely up to you. You just kind of figure out what works best for the way you work on your projects. You have the flexibility to decide for yourself. As for me, I am going to be creating a new library for each sort of topic or subject or program that I'm working on. One of the advantages of doing that is how easy it's going to be to copy that entire library to a different hard drive. And as we've seen, it's nice to be able to hide the libraries that we're not using. Okay, so now you have a pretty clear idea of how it's going to look once you get rolling. But the next thing we need to know is how to update existing events and projects. You can do them all at once, but I recommend updating them one at a time so that each one winds up in its own library. I have a feeling you're going to want to do the same thing, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Let's go ahead and start by demonstrating the steps with one of those old training drives. Remember drive 9? I'm just going to plug it in here. Okay, so whatever drive you're using, these are the folders that Final Cut has always used to manage your media. Final Cut Events and Final Cut Projects. Again, right now I'm using just a training drive to just demonstrate these steps. Of course, it's going to get a lot more complicated when you're talking about large drive with multiple events and multiple projects, and we're going to get to that next here. So, okay, I have drive 9 hooked up, and it's the only hard drive I have hooked up right now. I want to update all the projects and events on it, so I'll select Update Projects and Events from the File menu. And now we are going to go ahead and click Update All. All right, now Final Cut's going to do some work behind the scenes, as you might imagine, but here's what's actually happening. Final Cut is taking events and projects from drive 9 and putting them all into a single library. And that library is called drive 9's Projects and Events. See, each event is represented here in this library. That makes sense. But we also have a new event that contains the one project that was also located on drive 9. And that's it. Final Cut also asked if I wanted to move the old event to the trash, and I did that. But of course, you'll wait to empty the trash until you're sure everything worked properly. And it should, but you're probably thinking about your hard drive right now and the many events and projects that it's likely to contain for all the different shows that you're working on now and have worked on recently. This next section is going to show you how to update that stuff, one library at a time. Credit goes to larryjordan.biz, by the way, for publicizing this method I'm about to show you. It's all about carefully arranging your events and projects so that Final Cut only sees one at a time. This way you'll end up with multiple libraries, each one containing only the projects and events that go together. Let's go ahead and quit Final Cut Pro, and I'm going to go ahead and open up a Finder window. I'm going to work now with My Drive, which I cleverly called My Drive. This is a big RAID system at my desk with lots of data on it, lots of projects and events. If I were to update all the events and projects on this drive all at once, they would come out something like this. Just like the training drive we tested this with, Final Cut created a single library containing everything in the drive. Geez, look at all those unrelated projects in the same event. Wow. It's kind of a mess right now. And there is a better way, so let's go ahead and get to it. We're looking at the root of the drive here, which of course is where you'll always find these folders, Final Cut Events and Final Cut Projects. I've also created two folders here called Archived Final Cut Events and Projects. What I'm doing is moving the contents of each of these into their respective archive folders. Be very careful not to mix these up, of course. You'll want to put the events in the events folder and the projects in the projects folder. Now, this process is going to seem a little tedious, but it's definitely worth it. And you only have to do it with projects that you're ready to use in Final Cut 10.1. The goal here is for each library on your drive to contain only related projects and events. Since Final Cut will only look at these two folders when it starts the conversion process, what we're going to do is move only related events and projects into these folders. Okay, so many of these, in fact a lot of them, I'm not actually going to need anytime soon. So let's pick out a few that I will need, starting with events. Okay, let's just do an easy one. Here's HD Fill. I'm going to move just the HD Fill event from the archive to the active Final Cut Events folder. Now I'll move to the archive projects, and I'll take all of these CCTV IDs and put them in the active Final Cut Projects folder. It's a real mouthful to go on saying Final Cut Events and Final Cut Projects all the time. I promise you it's worth it, and we're moving past that era anyway, right? So now let's get back into Final Cut. Okay, so now it's just like the training drive demonstration we just did. When Final Cut is finished consolidating the events and projects into one library, it will, well, hopefully it'll find everything it needs. I'm sure there will be some missing media here and there on a few of these projects and events. You'll also be asked whether you want to move the old files to the trash, and I'm saying yes, because I know I can pull stuff out of there later. Anyway, when it's all done, you'll have a new library called something like this. In my case, it's My Drives, Projects, and Events. Now, this is where I get to rename the library something that makes sense and represents all the events and projects that I put together in that one library. And in this case, I'm going to call it Channel Fill. Now let's take a look back at the Finder, and here is the library we just made, Channel Fill. It shows up on my drive as one single file, so imagine how easy it'll be now to move that library from one hard drive to another. The benefits of this new system are really going to start becoming apparent once we start using it. Okay, so you'll notice that the Final Cut Events folder and the Final Cut Projects folders are gone. So when I'm ready to update another set of projects and events, I just need to manually myself recreate those folders right here in the root of the drive. Be sure to spell these correctly, by the way, or it really will not work. Okay, let's just do one more. How about the Salem Police stuff? Here's the SPD event with all my source material. And here's the only Salem PD project I've worked on lately, this driver tune-up episode. Back to Final Cut. Same steps, of course. I'm going to go to the File menu and find the Update tool. And there it is. I'll just rename it Salem PD, and there is another successful library for me to begin working with. Whew, now that was a training, huh? But it's not so bad, is it? Now we still have projects and events, and they're both contained in Final Cut 10.1's new libraries, okay? Let me know when you're starting to update your projects and events, and I'll make sure I'm around to help you get through it. We'll see you then.